The metal doors of the detention cell slammed shut with a loud bang. Zara pressed her back against the cold wall and closed her eyes. The silver scales on her arms glowed softly in the dim light. She was scared, alone, and very far from home. Jake Morrison walked down the long hallway outside the detention area. His boots made clicking sounds on the metal floor. He was supposed to be filing reports, but he could not stop thinking about what he had seen in the council meeting today. The way they had treated the alien woman made his stomach feel sick. He stopped walking and looked through the small window in her cell door. Zara sat on the narrow bed, her head in her hands. Her scales had turned a dark blue color. Jake had learned that this meant sadness in her people. The Velthari were not popular with most other aliens. They kept to themselves and rarely traded with others. Jake knew very little about them, but he knew they were smart and had amazing technology. What he did not know was why one of them was sitting in a human detention cell, asking for help. Earlier, that day, Jake had watched as Zara stood before the Galactic Council. She was tall and thin, with silver scales that covered her skin like armor. Her eyes were large and golden, and they seemed to glow with their own light. When she spoke, her voice was soft and musical, even though she struggled with the words. "Please," she had said to the council members, "I cannot go back. They will kill me. I only tried to warn others. I only tried to save lives." The council chamber was filled with representatives from 17 different worlds. There were the blue-skinned Andorians with their serious faces. The insect-like Zephyrians clicked their mandibles nervously. The tall, plant-like Verdians swayed, gently in their special atmosphere suits, but none of them looked at Zara with kindness. Most would not even look at her at all. Ambassador Kretak, another Velthari, stood up from his seat. His scales were darker than Zara's, almost black, and his eyes were cold. "This female is a criminal," he said in perfect galactic standard language. "She has stolen government secrets and shared them with our enemies. We demand her return to face justice." "That is not true," Zara had cried out. "I discovered plans to attack the Kethmori colonies. Innocent people would die. I had to warn them." The council members whispered to each other. Jake could see that most of them did not believe her. The Velthari were important trade partners. They provided advanced technology to many worlds. Nobody wanted to make them angry over one refugee. Lisa Bennett, the human ambassador, stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair, but she had a strong voice. "We should investigate these claims before making any decisions," she said. "If there is evidence of planned genocide, we cannot ignore it." But the other ambassadors were not interested in evidence. The Zephyrian representative clicked loudly. "The Velthari have been our allies for 200 years. We will not risk that relationship for one criminal." One by one, each species voted to send Zara back to her people. Even some who seemed uncomfortable with the decision went along with the majority. Only the humans voted to grant her asylum. "The decision is final," announced the council president, a tall Andorian with white hair. "The prisoner will be transferred to Velthari custody tomorrow." Jake had watched as security guards led Zara away. She did not fight or cry out. She just walked with her head down, her scales now completely dark. As she passed by Jake's seat, their eyes met for just a moment. In that brief look, he saw something that made his chest tight with emotion. It was not anger or hatred, it was disappointment. She had hoped for better from the galaxy, and they had failed her. Now, hours later, Jake stood outside her cell. He knew he should not be here. Talking to prisoners was against regulations, but he could not walk away. He pressed the button to open the communication panel. "Hello?" he said quietly. Zara looked up, surprised. Her golden eyes were wet with tears. "Why are you here, human?" Jake was not sure how to answer. "I wanted to say I'm sorry about today, about what happened in the council." She studied his face through the small window. "Your people voted for me. Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Jake said simply. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved closer to the door. "My name is Zara HFY. I am a scientist. I study stars and planets. I'm Jake Morrison. I work for the Diplomatic Corps." "Jake Morrison," she repeated slowly, as if trying to remember the name. Will you tell me something, Jake Morrison? Do all humans believe in doing the right thing, even when it is hard? Jake thought about this question. He remembered stories from Earth's history about people who stood up against evil even when everyone else was silent. He thought about his grandmother, who used to say that character was what you did when nobody was watching. Not all of us, he said honestly, but many of us try. Zara's scales began to glow a little brighter. On my world, I had a garden. I grew flowers that bloom in starlight. They were very beautiful, but they only opened at night when others could not see them. That sounds lovely, Jake said. The government destroyed my garden when they marked me as a traitor. They said I wasted resources on useless things. Her voice became very quiet. I will never see starlight flowers again. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, not at Zara, but at the people who had taken everything from her. Maybe you could grow new ones, he said. Somewhere else. Where? Zara asked. Tomorrow I go back. To my people. They will put me in prison or worse. Maybe not, Jake said. Sometimes things change. Zara looked at him with those golden eyes. You have hope, Jake Morrison. That is a rare thing in this galaxy. The communication panel beeped, warning that visiting time was over. Jake knew he had to leave, but he did not want to go. Zara, he said, whatever happens tomorrow, remember that someone listened to you. Someone believed you. I will remember, she said softly. As Jake walked away, he made a decision. He could not change what the council had voted. He could not stop the Velthari from taking Zara back to her homeworld. But maybe, just maybe, he could help her in another way. Sometimes the right thing to do was not the legal thing to do. His grandmother had taught him that too. The cargo bay of the transport ship was dark and quiet. Zara huddled behind a stack of supply crates trying to make herself as small as possible. Her scales had turned almost black to help her hide in the shadows. She could hear the crew members, talking as they worked, but she did not understand all their words. Jake had told her to stay hidden until they reached human space. That had been 6 hours ago. Her legs were cramped and she was very thirsty, but she did not dare move. If they found her, they would send her back to die. Hey, what's that over there? A voice called out. Zara's heart began to beat very fast. Heavy footsteps came closer to her hiding place. She closed her eyes and hoped they would not see her. Well, I'll be damned, said another voice. Jake wasn't kidding. A bright light shined on her face. Zara opened her eyes and saw 3 human crew members looking down at her. The man holding the light had short brown hair and kind eyes. The woman next to him had her arms crossed and looked angry. The third person, a young man with red hair, seemed curious. Come on out, said the man with kind eyes. We're not going to hurt you. Zara slowly crawled out from behind the crates. Her legs were stiff and she almost fell. The kind-eyed man reached out to help her, but she stepped back. On her world, touching strangers was not allowed. Sorry, the man said, lowering his hand. I'm Commander Alex Stone. This is Dr. Maya Patel and Engineer Tim Clark. I am Zara HFY, she said in her careful galactic standard. Jake Morrison told me to hide here. I did not want to cause trouble. Dr. Patel stepped forward. She had dark skin and curious eyes. You're the Velthari refugee, the one they were going to send back. Zara nodded. Yes. Jake said humans might help me. But if you do not want me here, I understand. Commander Stone looked at the other crew members. Jake sent us a message explaining everything. Said you tried to prevent a genocide. I tried, Zara said sadly. But I failed. Nobody would listen. Tell us what happened, Dr. Patel said gently. Zara was quiet for a moment. Talking about it made her heart hurt. But these humans had already helped her escape. Maybe they deserved to know the truth. I worked for the Velthari Science Council, she began. My job was to study other planets and their people. I loved my work. I thought knowledge was meant to help everyone. She sat down on a supply crate, her scales flickering with different colors as her emotions changed. 6 months ago, I discovered secret files in the government computers. They contained plans to attack the Kethmori colonies. The Kethmori are a peaceful people. They have no weapons, No armies? They just want to live quietly on their small worlds. Why would your government want to attack them? Asked Tim. Resources, Zara said bitterly. The Kethamori worlds have rare minerals that we need for our technology. Instead of trading fairly, the government decided to take what they wanted. Commander, Stone frowned. And you tried to warn the Kethamori? I sent a message to their council. I told them about the planned attack. I thought if they knew, they could ask the Galactic Council for protection. Zara's scales turned dark blue again. But someone discovered what I had done. They called me a traitor. They destroyed my home, my laboratory, everything I had worked for. Dr. Patel sat down next to her, being careful not to get too close. That must have been terrible. The worst part was that nobody believed me when I tried to tell the truth. Even at the Galactic Council, they thought I was lying. They said I was just trying to avoid punishment for stealing secrets. But you weren't lying, said Commander Stone. No. And now? Zara stopped talking and covered her face with her hands. What is it? Dr. Patel asked softly. While I was in the detention cell, I received a message on my communication device. Jake had given it back to me before we left. The message was from a friend who still works for the Science Council. Zara's voice became very quiet. The attack happened yesterday. All 7 Kethamori colonies. Millions of people are dead. The cargo bay became very quiet. The humans looked at each other with shock and sadness on their faces. I'm so sorry, whispered Dr. Patel. I could have done more, Zara said. I should have tried harder to make them listen. You did everything you could, Commander Stone said, firmly. You risked your life to warn them. That took courage. It was not enough. Tim stepped forward. But it was something. You tried to save them when nobody else would. That matters. Over the next few days, as the ship traveled toward human space, Zara slowly began to open up to the crew. Dr. Patel was especially interested in learning about Velthari biology. She discovered that Zara's scales could change color based on her emotions, and that she had weak telepathic abilities. Among my people, telepathy is considered a dangerous mutation, Zara explained as Dr. Patel ran some medical scans. Most Velthari cannot read minds. I can only sense strong emotions, and only when I'm very close to someone. But the government fears that people like me might grow stronger over time. That's why they really want you back, Dr. Patel realized. Not because you're a criminal, but because you're different. Yes, they study people like me in secret laboratories. They want to understand our abilities so they can use them as weapons. Dr. Patel looked angry. That's horrible. It is how things have always been on my world. The strong control the weak. Those who are different are either used or destroyed. It doesn't have to be that way, said Commander Stone, who had been listening. Humans believe that being different makes stronger, not weaker. Zara looked at him with surprise. Really? Really? Our greatest achievements came from people who thought differently than everyone else. We celebrate diversity. As they talked, Zara began to sense the emotions of the crew members around her. Commander Stone felt protective and determined. Dr. Patel was curious and excited about learning new things. Tim was friendly and welcoming. None of them seemed afraid of her or her abilities. For the first time in months, Zara felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Where are we going? She asked. A human colony called New Haven, Commander Stone replied. It's a good place, safe. The people there will help you figure out what to do next. And if the Velthari come looking for me, then they'll have to go through us first. Zara's scales brightened to a warm golden color. She had never expected to find kindness among strangers, especially aliens. But these humans had shown her more compassion in a few days than her own people had shown her in a lifetime. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. Don't thank us yet, said Dr. Patel with a smile. Wait until you meet the colonists. They can be a bit overwhelming at first. Overwhelming. Humans tend to be very enthusiastic about helping people in need. You might find yourself with more friends than you know what to do with. Zara thought about this. After being alone for so long, having too many friends seemed like a wonderful problem to have. Outside the ship's windows, the stars looked different than they had from her homeworld. But for the first time since leaving, Zara thought they looked beautiful instead of scary. Maybe, just maybe, she could build a new life among these strange, kind people who had chosen to help her when no one else would. The ship continued on its journey through space, carrying its precious cargo toward an uncertain but hopeful future. New Haven Colony stretched across a green valley between two mountain ranges. The buildings were simple but sturdy, made from local stone and metal from the nearby mines. Gardens grew between the houses, filled with earth vegetables and colorful, alien plants. To Zara, it looked like a painting from a children's book. Carl Thompson, the colony administrator, was a large man with a gray beard and tired eyes. He sat behind his desk and looked at Zara with concern. Jake stood nearby, ready to translate if needed. "I want to help," Carl said slowly. "But you have to understand, some folks here aren't comfortable with aliens. We've had problems before." "What kind of problems?" Jake asked. Carl sighed. 3 years ago, some Zephyrian traders cheated our miners out of 6 months' worth of rare metals. Last year, an Andorian medical team left in the middle of a plague outbreak because it was too dangerous. People here have learned not to trust outsiders. Zara's scales turned a pale blue. "I do not want to cause trouble. Maybe I should go somewhere else." "Nonsense," said a new voice from the doorway. A woman with short blonde hair and warm brown eyes walked into the office. "Carl Thompson, you should be ashamed of yourself." "Susan Clark," Carl warned. "Don't start." Susan ignored him and walked over to Zara. "Welcome to New Haven, dear. I'm Susan. I teach at the local school. Don't mind Carl. He worries too much." Zara looked at Susan. With surprise, the human woman's emotions felt warm and genuine. There was no fear or suspicion, only kindness. "Thank you," Zara said quietly. "Now then," Susan continued, turning back to Carl. "This young woman is a refugee who needs our help. What kind of people would we be if we turned her away?" Carl rubbed his forehead. "Susan, be practical. Where is she going to live? What is she going to do for work? And what happens when word gets out that we're harboring a wanted alien?" "She can stay with me until we find her a permanent place," Susan said. "As for work, we need someone who speaks multiple languages. Half our trade negotiations fail because of translation problems." Jake smiled. "See? You're already solving problems." Over. The following weeks, Zara slowly began to settle into life on New Haven. Susan's house was small but comfortable, with a garden in the back where Zara could sit and think. The human woman was patient and kind, teaching Zara about human customs and helping her improve her language skills. But not everyone in the colony was as welcoming as Susan. At the market, some vendors refused to serve Zara. Children would point and whisper when she walked by. A few adults made rude comments about lizard people when they thought she could not hear them. "Just ignore them," Susan said one evening as they sat in the garden. "They'll come around once they get to know you." "How can you be sure?" Zara asked. Her scales had been a dull gray all day, because underneath all that fear and suspicion, humans are good people. We just need time to remember it sometimes. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning. Zara was walking to the translation office when she heard screaming from the mining complex. People were running toward the main shaft, shouting for help. "What happened?" Susan called out as she ran up to the crowd. "Cave in," shouted one of the miners. "Tommy Wright is trapped down there. The entrance is completely blocked." Zara felt her heart race. She pushed through the crowd to get closer to the mine entrance. Rocks and metal beams blocked the tunnel completely. Heavy machinery was already working to clear the debris, but it would take hours. "How long has he been down there?" asked Dr. Patel, who had arrived with her medical kit. "About 20 minutes, replied the mine foreman, "but his air supply won't last more than an hour with all that dust." That was when Zara realized she could help. Her telepathic abilities were weak, but in moments of extreme emotion, she could sense thoughts from much farther away. Fear and panic were the strongest emotions of all. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Through the rock and debris, she could feel something, a small, frightened presence deep in the darkness. "He's alive," she said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "How do you know?" asked the foreman. "I can sense him. He's scared, but he's not hurt badly. He's in a side tunnel about 50 meters down and to the left." The foreman looked skeptical. "That's impossible. There's no way to know that." "No." She has telepathic abilities, Dr. Patel explained quickly. If she says he's there, he's there. The rescue team changed their approach based on Zara's guidance. Instead of clearing the main tunnel, they used smaller equipment to dig toward the side passage. It was faster and safer. Every few minutes, Zara would close her eyes and check on the boy. He's getting weaker, she reported, but he's still conscious. After 45 minutes of digging, they broke through. 8-year-old Danny Wright was pulled from the tunnel, covered in dust but alive and unharmed. His mother, Carol Wright, cried with relief as Dr. Patel checked him over. He's fine, the doctor announced. Just scared and dusty. Danny looked around at all the people surrounding him. When he saw Zara, his eyes went wide. The pretty lady with the sparkly skin, he said in a small voice. She found me in the dark. Carol Wright walked over to Zara with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she said simply. You saved my boy. Zara's scales brightened to a warm golden color. I am happy I could help. From that day forward, everything changed for Zara in New Haven. The vendors at the market greeted her by name. The children no longer pointed and whispered. Instead, they asked if she could make her scales change colors. Adults who had ignored her before now stopped to chat about the weather or ask about her work. Danny Wright became especially attached to her. He would visit the translation office after school, asking questions about her homeworld and telling her about his day. His innocent curiosity and acceptance meant more to Zara than any formal welcome could have. Why do your scales change colors? He asked one afternoon as they sat in Susan's garden. They show how I feel, Zara explained. Blue means sad, gold means happy, gray means worried. What color means love? Danny asked. Zara thought about this. On her home world, love was not something people discussed openly. I do not know. I have never felt that emotion strongly enough to see what color it makes. Well, when you figure it out, will you show me? Yes, Danny, I will show you. As the weeks passed, Zara began to understand what Susan had meant about humans being good people. They just needed time to see past their fears. Once they got to know her, they treated her not as an alien or a refugee, but simply as Zara. She learned to play human card games. She helped Susan in her garden, growing earth vegetables alongside plants from a dozen other worlds. She taught the local children how to count to 10 in Velthari. She even learned to appreciate human music, though it was very different from the harmonious tones of her homeworld. For the first time since leaving her planet, Zara felt like she belonged somewhere. New Haven was not just a place where she was safe. It was becoming home. But late at night, when she looked up at the unfamiliar stars, she sometimes wondered if this peace could last. Somewhere out there, her people were still looking for her. The Galactic Council still considered her a criminal, and the genocide she had tried to prevent was now a terrible reality that haunted her dreams. Still, when morning came and Danny knocked on the door asking if she wanted to see the new baby animals at the farm, Zara's scales would brighten with happiness. Whatever the future brought, she would face it with the strength she had found among these remarkable humans, who had chosen to see her worth when the rest of the galaxy had turned away. She was no longer just surviving. For the first time in her life, she was truly living. The alarm bells rang through New Haven Colony at dawn. Zara woke up in her small apartment above the translation office, her scales immediately turning dark with fear. She had heard those bells only once before, during a practice drill. But this was not practice. Jake burst through her door without knocking. His face was pale and serious. They're here, he said. 3 Velthari ships just entered the system. They're demanding your immediate surrender. Zara's legs felt weak. She sat down on her bed and stared at the floor. After 8 months of peace, her past had finally caught up with her. How long do I have? The Colonial Council is meeting right now to discuss options. But Zara, Jake's voice was gentle. The Galactic Council is backing their claim. If we don't hand you over, they could cut off all trade with human colonies. They might even expel humanity from the Council entirely. Through the window, Zara could see people running in the streets. Some were heading toward the spaceport, probably hoping to leave before trouble started. Others were moving in the opposite direction, toward the town center where the council building stood. I have to go, Zara said quietly. I will not let innocent people suffer because of me. No, Jake said firmly. We're not giving up that easily. At the emergency council meeting, the debate was fierce. Carl Thompson sat at the head of the table, looking older than his 55 years. Around him, the colony's leaders argued about what to do. We have no choice, said Paul Martinez, the head of mining operations. If we protect her, they'll destroy our economy. We have families to think about. And what about our conscience? Shot back Susan Clark. Zara saved a child's life. She's one of us now. Dr. Patel stood up from her seat. I've been studying the medical data we collected from Zara. Her telepathic abilities aren't dangerous, they're evolutionary. Her people want her back because she represents the future of their species, and that terrifies their government. All the more reason to hand her over, said Martinez. We can't fight an entire alien civilization over one refugee. Why not? Asked a new voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Danny Wright's mother, Carol, standing in the doorway. Behind her were dozens of other colonists, miners, farmers, shopkeepers, teachers. Their faces were determined. Why not fight for her? Carol continued as she walked into the room. She risked everything to save lives. When my boy was trapped in that mine, she didn't hesitate to help. Now she needs our help. Carol, be reasonable, Carl said. This isn't just about Zara anymore. If we refuse their demands, they could attack the colony. Let them try, said Tom Bradley, the colony's chief engineer. We didn't come to this frontier world to be safe. We came here to build something better than what we left behind on Earth. More colonists filed into the room. Zara sat in the corner, overwhelmed by the sight of so many humans willing to stand up for her. Her scales flickered between blue and gold, unable to settle on a single emotion. This is madness, Martinez protested. You're talking about war with the Velthari. No, said a calm voice from the doorway. They're talking about doing what's right. General Nick Rodriguez walked into the room, followed by several human military officers. The general was a tall man with graying hair and sharp eyes. His uniform bore the insignia of the Colonial Defense Force. General, Carl said with relief. Thank God you're here. Maybe you can talk sense into these people. Actually, Rodriguez said, I'm here to support them. The room erupted in surprised voices. Martinez looked like he was about to faint. General, you can't be serious. The political implications alone are exactly why I'm here, Rodriguez finished. 3 hours ago, my ships intercepted Velthari military communications. They're not just here for Zara. They're planning to establish a military base in this system, with or without our permission. What? Carl gasped. The Velthari have been looking for an excuse to expand into human space. Zara was just convenient. If we hand her over, they'll thank us politely, and then start building weapons platforms in our backyard. Dr. Patel leaned forward. What do you mean, weapons platforms? Intelligence suggests they're preparing for another expansion campaign. After the Keth Mori genocide, they've grown bolder. Earth Command believes they plan to target the Rylak Federation next. Jake felt his stomach drop. Another genocide? Millions of lives, Rodriguez confirmed. And if we let them establish a foothold here, we become complicit in whatever they do next. Zara stood up suddenly, her scales bright red with anger. No, she said firmly. I will not let my people use me as an excuse to hurt others. I will surrender myself before I let that happen. That won't stop them, Rodriguez said gently. They've already made their decision. Whether you surrender or not, they plan to occupy this system. Susan Clark walked over to Zara and took her hand. Then we fight. We fight, Carol Wright echoed. One by one, the colonists in the room voiced their agreement. Even Martinez, after a long moment of silence, nodded his head. If we're doing this, we do it together. Outside, the Velthari ships moved into orbit, around New Haven. Their sleek dark hulls looked like predators circling their prey. Ambassador Kretak's face appeared on the colony's main communication screen, his black scales gleaming in the artificial light. Humans of New Haven, he said, in his cold voice. You harbor a dangerous criminal. Surrender her immediately or face the consequences. Carl Thompson, flanked by General Rodriguez and surrounded by his people, looked directly into the camera. Ambassador Kretak, the being you seek is under the protection of human law. She has committed no crimes against our people and has In fact, saved lives. We formally refuse your demand. Kretak's eyes narrowed. You make a grave mistake, Administrator Thompson. We will take her by force if necessary. Then you'll have to go through all of us. Carol Wright called out from behind Carl. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, everyone looked at each other with a mixture of fear and determination. They had just declared war on one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Zara felt tears running down her face, but her scales were glowing bright gold. These humans, these wonderful, impossible humans, were willing to risk everything for her. Not because she was useful to them, not because she could offer them something in return, but simply because it was the right thing to do. Why? She whispered to Susan. Why would you do this for me? Susan smiled and squeezed her hand. Because that's what family does, dear. We take care of each other. As the colony prepared for what might come, Zara finally understood what love looked like on her scales. It was gold, bright and warm and beautiful. The same color as hope, as courage, as the decision to stand up for what was right even when the whole galaxy was watching. For the first time in her life, Zara was not alone. She had found her family among the stars, and she would fight alongside them to protect the future they were building together. The Velthari ships powered up their weapons, but the humans did not back down. Whatever happened next, they would face it as one people, united in their belief that some things were worth fighting for. The battle for Zara's freedom, and for the soul of humanity itself, was about to begin. The standoff lasted 3 tense days. Velthari warships hung in space above New Haven like dark clouds, their weapons trained on the colony below. The humans had set up defensive positions around the town, but everyone knew their small militia could not stand against advanced alien technology. Zara spent those days helping where she could. She used her telepathic abilities to sense the mood of the Velthari crews above, reporting that they seemed nervous and uncertain. This was not the easy mission they had expected. On the third morning, everything changed. Jake was monitoring the communication channels when his equipment picked up multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. His heart raced as he tried to identify the new arrivals. Carl, he shouted, running into the command center. We've got company. The main screen lit up with sensor data. 12 ships had just emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming silver and blue in the starlight. They were human vessels led by a massive battlecruiser that dwarfed the Velthari ships. This is Admiral Kate Rivers of the UES Liberty, came a strong female voice over the communication system. Velthari vessels, you are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately. Ambassador Kretak's face appeared on screen, his scales dark with anger. Admiral Rivers, this is a lawful extradition mission. The criminals you harbor must face justice. The only criminals here are the ones who committed genocide against the Keth Mori. Admiral Rivers replied coldly. We have evidence of war crimes, Ambassador. Evidence that your government has been trying very hard to hide. Zara felt her scales brighten with hope. They know, she whispered to Susan. Someone finally listened to the truth. On the screen, Admiral Rivers continued speaking. For the past 8 months, human intelligence services have been investigating the Keth Mori massacre. We have recovered data from the destroyed colonies, intercepted communications, and testimony from survivors who escaped the attack. Jake's equipment suddenly displayed dozens of files, documents, recordings, photographs. The evidence of Velthari war crimes was overwhelming and undeniable. This evidence has been presented to the Galactic Council, Admiral Rivers said. Several member species have formally condemned the Velthari government and demanded accountability. The Andorian Republic has severed diplomatic relations. The Zephyrian Collective has suspended all trade agreements. Kretak's image flickered as he received urgent messages from his homeworld. His confident expression began to crack. These accusations are false, fabricated by human spies. The accusations come from Zara Kethai herself, Admiral, Rivers said firmly. A brave scientist who risked everything to warn innocent people about your government's plans. She is not a criminal, Ambassador. She is a hero. General Rodriguez stepped forward in the colony command center. Admiral, what are your orders? The Velthari have exactly 1 hour to withdraw from this system, came the reply. If they refuse, we will remove them by force. The next hour was the longest of Zara's life. She stood with the colonists in the town square, watching the sky and waiting to see if her people would choose war or retreat. With 10 minutes left in the deadline, the Velthari ships began to move. One by one, they activated their jump drives and disappeared into hyperspace. Ambassador Kretak's final transmission was brief and bitter. "This matter is not finished," he said. "The Velthari do not forget those who betray us." "Neither do humans," Admiral Rivers replied, "and we never abandon our own." The celebration in New Haven lasted until dawn. People danced in the streets, shared food and stories, and welcomed the human fleet personnel who came down to the surface. Zara found herself at the center of it all, receiving hugs and congratulations from people who had become her family. Danny Wright ran up to her with a big smile on his face. "Zara, the bad guys are gone. You're safe now." Zara knelt down to his level, her scales glowing bright gold. "Yes, Danny, I am safe. We are all safe. Does this mean you'll stay with us forever?" Zara looked around at the faces surrounding her. Susan with her warm smile, Jake with his determined eyes, Carol Wright with tears of joy on her cheeks, Carl Thompson looking proud and relieved. These people had risked everything for her. They had faced down an alien fleet because they believed she was worth protecting. "Yes," she said softly. "I think I will stay here forever." Admiral Rivers met with Zara privately the next day. The Admiral was a stern-looking woman with silver hair and kind eyes. She had spent 30 years defending human colonies across the galaxy. "Ms. HFY," she said formally. "On behalf of the Human Colonial Authority, I would like to offer you full citizenship and protection under human law. What happened to you will never happen again." "Thank you," Zara replied. "But I want to do more than just hide among humans. I want to help others who are running from their own governments." Admiral Rivers smiled. "I was hoping you would say that. We're establishing a new refugee assistance program, and we need someone with your experience to run it. Someone who understands what it means to lose everything and start over." Over the following months, Zara threw herself into her new work. She helped establish safe houses on a dozen human worlds, created translation programs for refugee services, and worked with Dr. Patel to develop better ways of helping alien refugees adapt to human society. Her telepathic abilities, enhanced by human medical technology, made her uniquely qualified to help traumatized refugees deal with their experiences. She could sense their pain, their fear, their hope, and help them find the strength to rebuild their lives. The first group of refugees she helped were survivors from the Rylac Federation, fleeing a new Velthari expansion campaign. After that, came political dissidents from the Andorian Republic, religious minorities from the Zephyrian Collective, and scientists from a dozen different worlds who had been persecuted for their research. Each group brought their own challenges and their own stories of loss, but they also brought hope for a better future, and Zara made sure they found it among the human colonies. 5 years after the standoff at New Haven, Zara stood before the Galactic Council once again. But this time, she was not a refugee begging for asylum. She was Ambassador Zara HFY, the first non-human to represent humanity in galactic affairs. The council chamber had changed too. The Velthari seats were empty. Their government had collapsed after evidence of multiple genocides came to light. The Kethmori had a new representative, one of the few survivors of the massacre. Several new species had joined the council, many of them refugees who had found new homes among human worlds. The Refugee Assistance Program has helped over 10,000 displaced beings find new lives, Zara reported to the assembly. These people have not just survived, they have thrived. They have become scientists, teachers, artists, and leaders. In their new communities. She paused and looked around the chamber, her scales glowing with confidence. This is what happens when we choose compassion over convenience. When we reach out to those who have been abandoned by others. Humanity has shown the galaxy that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. After the session, Zara returned to New Haven for a visit. The colony had grown into a small city, with buildings reaching toward the sky and parks filled with plants from 100 different worlds. At the center of town stood a memorial to the Kethmori victims, tended by children from dozens of different species. Danny Wright, now 13 years old, met her at the spaceport. He had grown tall and was studying xenobiology, inspired by his childhood friendship with Zara. "How was the council meeting?" he asked as they walked through the familiar streets. "Productive," Zara replied. "We're establishing refugee centers on 20 new worlds next year." "That's great." "Oh, and guess what? Susan finally finished her book about the first year you lived here. She wants you to write the introduction." Zara laughed, a sound like musical chimes. "I would be honored." That evening, as she sat in Susan's garden under the alien stars, Zara reflected on how much her life had changed. She had lost her homeworld, her career, and her original people. But she had gained something far more valuable: a chosen family, a purpose, and a place where being different was celebrated rather than feared. The starlight flowers she had planted years ago bloomed around her, their petals glowing softly in the darkness. They were not the same as the ones from her homeworld, but they were beautiful in their own way. Like her new life, they had grown from seeds of loss into something wonderful and unexpected. Danny sat down beside her, now old enough to appreciate the quiet beauty of the night. "Zara," he said thoughtfully, "do you ever regret leaving your homeworld?" She considered this question carefully. "I regret the circumstances that forced me to leave. I regret that I could not save the Kethmori, but I do not regret the life I have built here. Because of us? Because of all of us." She corrected gently. "Humans taught me that family is not about where you come from, but about who chooses to stand beside you when the universe turns dark." As they sat together in comfortable silence, Zara's scales glowed with the warm gold color that had become her signature emotion. Love, hope, and belonging all mixed together in a brilliant display that lit up the garden like a beacon. Somewhere in the vast galaxy, other refugees were probably looking up at the stars and wondering if they would ever find a place to call home. But Zara,